The galaxy had always been a place of peace, at least for the alien species who had lived there for millennia. The stars twinkled like 1,000 tiny beacons, watching over the planets below. Many species had flourished, building vast cities and creating advanced civilizations. The alien races had come to think of the universe as their domain, safe, secure, and predictable. But that peace was shattered. It started with a whisper, an unexpected tremor that rippled through the fabric of the galaxy. At first, no one knew what it was. But then, the reports started coming in. Entire colonies, ones that had never even faced a real threat before, were falling. Destroyed, burned to the ground. The peaceful races who had once held such pride in their power and prosperity were now fighting for their lives. Something, or someone, was hunting them. It didn't take long before the aliens realized the truth. They were outmatched. No force they could summon could stand against the invaders. Their armies were scattered and disorganized, incapable of holding their ground. Entire fleets were wiped out in seconds, their ships torn apart like paper in a storm. Fear began to grip the hearts of the most courageous among them. And so, the SOS was sent. It wasn't a typical call for help. There were no boasts of strength or promises of wealth in exchange for assistance. This was a raw cry for survival, a desperate plea from the edge of extinction. They sent the signal across the stars, hoping beyond hope that someone, anyone, might hear them. The message echoed through the cosmos. We are in peril. We are helpless. Please, we beg you, save us. The alien leaders knew this was their final chance. The SOS was their last card, and it was one they hoped they wouldn't have to play. But as the days passed, it became clear they had no choice. The invaders were closing in, and their armies were no match for the sheer power of the enemy. The situation had grown worse by the hour. But there was a secret in the galaxy, an unknown force, a name whispered in fear and awe, the Deathworlders. No one knew much about the Deathworlders. They were a mystery, a distant rumor. Some said they were a race of warriors from planets so dangerous that even the bravest warriors feared to visit. Some said they lived by a code that was as ancient as the stars themselves. Whatever the truth, their reputation preceded them. The Deathworlders didn't care for diplomacy or peace. They cared only for their own survival, and they didn't fight for anyone except themselves. But when the SOS reached them, something unexpected happened. The Deathworlders heard the cry, and they answered. No one had expected this. The galaxy's most feared and misunderstood race was coming to the aid of those they had no reason to help. The aliens had not even made a formal request to the Deathworlders, yet here they were. The powerful, merciless warriors, the ones who had conquered entire worlds, had turned their attention to the fragile, desperate species who had called out for help. And so, with the flicker of unknown technology and the hum of warships cutting through the vacuum of space, the Deathworlder fleet began its journey toward the galaxy in distress. The unexpected arrival. In the heart of the galaxy, the SOS continued to reverberate through space, a desperate cry from those on the brink of annihilation. The alien species, once proud and powerful, were now reduced to nothing but survivors. Hope had dwindled to near extinction. Each new wave of destruction made the prospect of salvation seem more impossible by the minute. Yet, as the last glimmers of hope began to fade, something shifted. The silence of the void was shattered by the roar of engines, a sound unlike anything the aliens had ever heard before. It wasn't the hum of sleek, polished warships they were accustomed to, nor was it the silent, menacing approach of the enemy fleet. No, this was something different, something wild, untamed. The Deathworlders had arrived. Their fleet wasn't like anything the galaxy had seen. It wasn't made of gleaming starships with perfectly straight lines and military-grade technology. Instead, their ships seemed to have been forged from the very chaos of the universe itself, brutal, jagged, and ominous. The Deathworlders' vessels looked more like something designed to survive the most inhospitable environments known to existence, not to conquer. The massive ships bore scars of battles long fought, and their surface looked like it had been weathered by eons of warfare. The first ship entered the galaxy's edge with a violent burst of energy, warping the very fabric of space itself. It tore through the void with unnatural speed, a display of power that left the observing aliens speechless. The ships that followed were no less intimidating. They moved with purpose, their weapons charged, their crew ready. The Deathworlders were coming. For the first time in days, a sense of calm settled over the alien leaders. But it was not the calm of peace. It was the calm before a storm. They could feel the weight of the coming battle in their bones, and it made them nervous. The Deathworlders did not fight for free, and their motives were often impossible to decipher. Were they here to truly help, or was there something more? As the fleet approached, the alien commanders prepared themselves for the worst. They had nothing left to lose. Their once proud fleets had been decimated by the invaders, their planets burning in the wake of the enemy's merciless assault. But with the arrival of the Deathworlders, a glimmer of hope began to form. The unknown warriors had answered the call, and perhaps they could offer salvation, even if their methods were unconventional. On the flagship of the Deathworlder fleet, the commander, a towering figure with the hardened look of someone who had seen the worst the universe had to offer, stood at the helm. His eyes were cold and calculating, his expression unreadable. But those who knew him understood that he wasn't here out of some sense of kindness. The Deathworlders didn't do charity. The fleet moved swiftly, bypassing the border worlds and heading directly to the heart of the conflict. Their ships cut through space like predators closing in on their prey. It wasn't the approach of a rescue mission. It was the approach of a force of nature. And the galaxy would soon understand what it meant to face the wrath of the Deathworlders. As the Deathworlder ships entered the battle zone, the alien forces held their breath. Would the mysterious warriors fight to win, or would they simply watch, letting the destruction unfold around them? The enemy, sensing the arrival of the Deathworlders, paused their assault. They had never encountered anything like this before, and uncertainty rippled through their ranks. The unknown enemy was no longer a shadow. They were a tangible threat, and they were here for one reason only, to bring the galaxy to its knees. But the Deathworlders had their own agenda, and it wasn't one the galaxy was ready to understand. What the alien forces hadn't realized was that the Deathworlders were not just responding to a cry for help. They were marking their territory. Their arrival was a declaration of war, and they weren't here for a simple rescue mission. The Deathworlders didn't save. They conquered. They didn't negotiate. They obliterated. As the battle lines were drawn, the fate of the galaxy now rested on the shoulders of a race that had lived for nothing but war. And for the first time in this conflict, it was the Deathworlders who would decide whether the galaxy would burn or be reborn. The clash of powers. The galaxy trembled as the Deathworlder fleet entered the fray. Their arrival was like a storm breaking the silence of the universe. The alien forces had thought they were the final hope, but now, standing in the shadows of the Deathworlders, they weren't sure if their survival was guaranteed. The once invincible alien forces, now decimated by relentless battles, tried to regroup, but they weren't prepared for what was coming. Their ships were powerful, but nothing like the chaotic, relentless behemoths that the Deathworlders commanded. The battle that was about to unfold would determine everything. The Deathworlder fleet didn't hesitate. As soon as their ships were in range, they launched a brutal attack. Energy cannons fired with blinding intensity, and the enemy's shields faltered under the crushing power. The Deathworlders didn't waste time with diplomacy. They struck first and asked questions later. Their tactics were direct and merciless. They had no intention of playing by the rules the galaxy had come to know. The alien leaders on the front lines watched in disbelief as their defenses were shredded. They had seen warfare before, but this was something else. The Deathworlder ships didn't just fight. They destroyed. They tore through the battlefield, leaving nothing in their wake but the wreckage of ships and the remnants of enemies who had dared to challenge them. On the flagship of the Deathworlder fleet, Commander Crass, a towering figure with eyes like burning embers, gave the order to press on. His voice was low, but it carried the weight of 1,000 battles. We've been called to fight, and will fight. This galaxy is about to learn the true meaning of power. As the order was given, the Deathworlder fleet pushed deeper into the heart of the conflict. Their ships split the skies like hammers smashing through stone, carving their path through the enemy lines. Meanwhile, the alien forces scrambled to find a way to retaliate, but it was clear they were outmatched. The Deathworlders had no mercy. Their enemy ships seemed to melt away under the overwhelming force. The alien commanders watched their forces crumble, powerless to stop the relentless advance of the Deathworlder fleet. The battle raged on for hours. The space around the battlefield became a swirling chaos of fire and debris. The alien ships, once sleek and efficient, were now broken and burned. Their once proud fleets were being crushed under the might of the Deathworlders. The question was no longer whether they would survive. It was whether there would be anything left to save. But even as the Deathworlders dominated the field, the aliens couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. This was not a rescue mission. The Deathworlders had come for something more, something bigger than a simple fight. As the galaxy's last defenders watched their fleets fall, they realized, perhaps too late, that the Deathworlders weren't here to save them. They were here to conquer. In the depths of the battlefield, a mysterious signal flashed on the alien commander screens. It was faint but unmistakable. An encrypted message, one they had never expected to see. The message was clear. Victory is not salvation. It is the beginning. As the Deathworlder fleet continued to crush their enemies, the meaning behind this message began to sink in. The Deathworlders had not come to preserve the galaxy. They had come to reshape it. The fate of the galaxy was no longer in the hands of the alien forces. It was now in the hands of those who fought with unmatched ferocity. And as the battle continued, one thing became clear. The Deathworlders were not here to simply fight for the alien species. They were here to change the very fabric of the galaxy. What that meant for the future, no one could say. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same. A galaxy's betrayal. The battlefield had become eerily silent, save for the occasional crackle of energy from the wreckage. The Deathworlder fleet hovered ominously, their ships casting long shadows over the remnants of the alien forces. For the survivors, the battle felt like a nightmare they couldn't wake from. But the real nightmare was just beginning. On the bridge of the alien command ship, Commander Vale sat in stunned silence. The few remaining leaders around him whispered among themselves, their voices filled with fear and confusion. "They came to save us," one of them said, trembling. "Why are they still attacking? Why didn't they stop?" Vale didn't answer. He couldn't. The message they had intercepted earlier replayed in his mind. Victory is not salvation. It is the beginning. What did it mean? What were the Deathworlders truly after? Suddenly, a transmission cut through the static. The commanding voice of Deathworlder Fleet Commander Krass boomed across all channels, his tone cold and unyielding. "Aliens of the galaxy, you called for salvation. You begged for aid, and we answered. But now you will understand the cost of survival." The alien leaders froze as Krass continued, his words slicing through their fear like a blade. "For too long, this galaxy has been weak, divided by politics, crippled by indecision. You allowed chaos to thrive. You let your enemies push you to the brink. We are not saviors. We are the cure. From this moment forward, your galaxy belongs to us." Gasps filled the alien command center. The truth hit them like a blow to the chest. The Deathworlders hadn't come to save them out of kindness. They had come to seize control. The aliens had unknowingly invited their conquerors. On the battlefield, the Deathworlder fleet began deploying smaller ships, descending upon the planets that had served as the alien strongholds. The invaders didn't discriminate. Civilians, soldiers, leaders, everyone was treated as a subject of the new regime. Vale clenched his fists. His people had trusted the Deathworlders. They had believed in the legends of humanity's strength tempered by compassion. But now, those legends felt like lies. "We have to fight back," one of his officers whispered. "We can't let them take everything." "With what?" Another snapped. "We're broken. They've destroyed our fleets, and now they're dismantling what's left of our worlds." Vale stood abruptly, his voice cutting through the rising panic. "Enough. We may be outmatched, but we are not defeated. We have one advantage they do not. We know this galaxy better than they ever will. If we are to survive, we must unite and resist, not as fractured species, but as one." The room fell silent. The idea of unity among the alien species had always been a dream, but now it was a necessity. It was their only chance against the Deathworlder's overwhelming force. As the alien leaders began to organize a desperate resistance, another signal came through. This one was encrypted and carried no identifying markers. Vale hesitated, then opened the channel. The distorted voice spoke, low and urgent. "Commander Vale, if you wish to save your galaxy, meet us at the coordinates attached. Time is running out." Vale's officers exchanged uneasy glances. It could be a trap, but what choice did they have? With a nod, Vale made his decision. "Prepare a small ship," he ordered. "We're going." The Hidden Alliance. The alien craft was small and battered, hardly a match for the sleek precision of the Deathworlder ships. Still, it weaved through the debris of the battlefield, avoiding detection. Inside, Commander Vale and his trusted officers sat in tense silence. The encrypted coordinates led them to a desolate moon on the outskirts of their star system. The surface of the moon was bleak, covered in jagged rocks and endless shadows. As they descended, an unmarked structure emerged, its design unfamiliar to any known species. It was ancient yet functional, as though it had been waiting for this exact moment. Vale stepped out of the craft cautiously, his weapon holstered but ready. His officers followed, scanning their surroundings. Before them, the entrance to the structure opened, and a figure stepped out. The being was cloaked, its face obscured by a mask of shimmering metal. Its voice, when it spoke, carried a strange resonance that made it impossible to determine its species. "You came," the figure said. "That is good. It means you still have hope." "Who are you?" Vale demanded, his voice sharp. "And why should we trust you?" The figure paused, then slowly removed the mask. Gasps rippled through Vale's group. The being's face was a mix of features from multiple species, a hybrid seemingly impossible. "I am the product of what happens when unity is more than a dream," the figure said, "and I am here to help you fight." Vale narrowed his eyes. "Fight? Against the Deathworlders? How could you possibly help us? Their fleet is unstoppable." The figure gestured for them to follow. "You underestimate what the Deathworlders have overlooked. Their strength blinds them, but we have been preparing for this moment for centuries. Come, there is much to show you." Inside the facility, the group entered the structure, and their breath caught. The interior was a hive of activity. Beings from countless alien species worked together seamlessly. Engineers tinkered with advanced weaponry. Strategists analyzed star charts, and soldiers trained with a singular purpose. "This is impossible," one of Vale's officers whispered. "No," the figure corrected. "This is the result of desperation and unity. Like you, our species were once scattered and vulnerable, but we came together. We shared knowledge, resources, and strength, and now we are ready to stand against the Deathworlders." Vale felt a spark of hope for the first time since the invasion began. "You've built an army." The figure nodded. "An army, yes, but also something more. We've developed technology the Deathworlders cannot comprehend. Their strength lies in brute force. Ours lies in adaptation and strategy." The group was led to a massive chamber filled with ships, sleek, fast, and brimming with weaponry unlike anything Vale had ever seen. The figure explained how the fleet had been constructed in secret, using materials and techniques that would evade detection by even the most advanced Deathworlder sensors. The plan. As they moved deeper into the facility, the figure outlined the plan. The Deathworlders believe they have already won. Their fleet is spread thin, securing what they've taken. This is their weakness. We strike where they least expect it, disrupt their supply lines, and force them into disarray. Vale hesitated. It's bold, but even with your fleet, we don't have the numbers to face them head-on. The figure's eyes gleamed. We won't need to. If we can rally the remaining free systems and show them that resistance is possible, the galaxy will rise. The Deathworlders rely on fear to maintain control. Fear is a weapon we can turn against them. Vel's officers exchanged glances, their skepticism giving way to determination. For the first time, they had allies, true allies, and a chance to fight back. Cliffhanger ending. Before they could ask more questions, an alarm blared through the facility. The figure's expression darkened. They'd found us. How? Vale demanded. The figure shook their head. It doesn't matter. This is our first test. Will you stand and fight, or will you flee like the others? Val's hand went to his weapon. We'll fight. As the facility's defenses activated and the first Deathworlder ships entered the moon's atmosphere, Vale realized that this would be their moment of truth. The resistance had begun. The battle for survival. The moon's surface lit up as explosions shattered the silence. Deathworlder ships descended in waves, their intimidating presence casting shadows over the desolate terrain. Inside the facility, alarms blared, and every being scrambled into action. Commander Vale stood amidst the chaos, his jaw tight, but his resolve unshaken. This was no longer a desperate retreat. It was a fight for survival. And maybe, just maybe, a turning point in the war. The defensive struggle. The facility's hidden defenses roared to life. Automated turrets emerged from the rocky surface, spitting energy bolts at the incoming ships. Shield generators hummed, forming a dome of light over the base. Yet for every Deathworlder ship that was shot down, another took its place. Vale and his team were assigned to a command center deep within the base. Holographic displays flickered, showing the battlefield above. Every second felt like an eternity as they watched their allies fight. We can't hold this position forever, one officer said, his voice strained. Their reinforcements will overwhelm us. Vale turned to the cloaked figure, who had remained eerily calm. You said you were ready for this. Prove it. The figure nodded. It's time to deploy the fleet. Unleashing the hidden fleet. A hidden hangar deep beneath the facility opened, revealing dozens of sleek, advanced ships. Pilots from various species rushed to their stations, their training put to the ultimate test. The fleet launched, emerging from the moon like a swarm of fireflies. The Deathworlder fleet, confident in its dominance, was caught off guard. These new ships were faster and more agile, weaving through enemy fire with precision. Advanced weaponry disabled Deathworlder systems, turning their strength against them. The tide of the battle began to shift. Val's leadership tested. Val wasn't content to sit in the command center. He joined a strike team heading to the moon's surface to sabotage the Deathworlders' ground units. As they moved through the rocky terrain, explosions rocked the ground, and the air was filled with the screech of fighter jets. Their mission was dangerous, planting explosives on key Deathworlder equipment. But Val's tactical mind shone through. Under his leadership, the team moved like a well-oiled machine, outmaneuvering the enemy at every turn. A critical decision. Back at the facility, the cloaked figure was monitoring a new development. The Deathworlders are bringing in a dreadnought, they announced grimly. If it arrives, we won't have the firepower to stop it. Vale, hearing this over the comms, cursed under his breath. What are our options? The figure hesitated. We have a prototype weapon. It's untested, but it could destroy the dreadnought. The problem is, it will also expose our location to the entire Deathworlder fleet in the sector. Val's officers turned to him, waiting for his decision. If we don't use it, we lose everything we've built here, Vale said. Prepare the weapon. The prototype fires. The weapon, a massive energy cannon, emerged from the facility's highest point. Its power hummed, shaking the entire structure. Targeting the dreadnought, it fired a beam of light so intense it seemed to pierce the heavens. The dreadnought, a symbol of Deathworlder supremacy, exploded in a blinding flash. Cheers erupted across the comms, but the victory was short-lived. The figure's prediction had come true. Enemy reinforcements were already en route. Cliffhanger ending. Val's team returned to the facility just as the shields began to falter. The figure turned to him, their voice heavy. We've bought ourselves time, but not much. We need to evacuate and spread the word. This battle is only the beginning. Vale clenched his fists. Then let's make sure this beginning leads to their end. As the facility prepared for evacuation and the Deathworlders loomed closer, the Resistance faced its greatest challenge yet. The battle was far from over, and the galaxy's fate hung by a thread. The rise of Resistance, the Deathworlder fleet loomed above, casting a shadow of doom over the battered moon. Inside the facility, chaos reigned as evacuation orders blared. But amidst the frenzy, Commander Vale and his team stood firm, ready to make their final stand. The final stand begins. The shield protecting the facility flickered, barely holding against the relentless bombardment. Engineers worked frantically, but their efforts only bought moments of reprieve. The Deathworlders had sent everything they had: fighters, bombers, and even ground troops. Vale addressed the remaining defenders. We are not just fighting for this base. We are fighting for every voice the Deathworlders try to silence. If we fall, the galaxy loses hope. Cheers erupted, though fear lingered in their eyes. A desperate plan. The cloaked figure stepped forward, revealing a holographic map of the battlefield. We can't win this fight directly, but if we disable their flagship, we can disrupt their command structure. Their fleet will fall into chaos. Vale studied the map. You're suggesting a suicide mission. The figure nodded solemnly. I'll lead the strike team. You and the rest must escape to rally the Resistance. Vale hesitated, but the determination in the figure's eyes convinced him. Then let's give them a reason to remember us. The strike on the flagship. The strike team launched in stealth ships, weaving through the chaos of the battlefield. The Deathworlder flagship was a massive, menacing structure bristling with weapons. Using advanced cloaking technology, the team infiltrated the ship, disabling its internal sensors. Vale led his group with precision, planting charges on key systems. They moved like shadows, evading patrols and cutting through resistance when necessary. As they approached the command center, alarms blared. The Deathworlders had discovered their presence. The climactic battle. The command center became a battlefield as Vale and his team faced wave after wave of Deathworlder soldiers. Blaster fire lit up the room, and the air was thick with smoke and screams. Val's sharp tactics and the team's unity gave them an edge, but their numbers dwindled. The charges were set, and the timer ticked down. Get out now, Vale ordered, covering the team's retreat. Sacrifices and triumph. As the team escaped the flagship, Vale remained behind, holding the line. He watched the timer hit 0, a grim smile on his face. The charges detonated, ripping through the flagship. Explosions cascaded across its hull, and the mighty ship began to break apart. The Deathworlder fleet faltered, their coordination shattered without their command center. The aftermath. From the Resistance's escape ships, survivors watched as the Deathworlder fleet scattered. Cheers erupted, tears of relief and triumph streaming down their faces. Val's sacrifice had bought them a chance to rebuild, to fight back, and to inspire others across the galaxy. A new beginning. The cloaked figure, now leading the Resistance, broadcast a message across the galaxy. To every being who has suffered under the Deathworlder's rule, know this: we will not stop. We will not falter. Today we rise as one. Today We fight for freedom. Cliffhanger ending. As the Resistance's ships disappeared into hyperspace, a shadow loomed in the darkness of space, a Deathworlder superweapon, even more devastating than the flagship. The fight was far from over. The galaxy's greatest battle was yet to come.